surprising here. But speaking of the SEC, sir, Georgia Florida is sticking around in Jacksonville for at least the 2024 and 2025 season. Renovations, the possibility in 2026. We'll see what happens with the Jaguar Stadium because that's still up for debate. Like, it doesn't seem like a new stadium's happening for them anytime soon. But I don't know. I think it's interesting because it seemed like there was a lot of momentum, and it seemed like Kirby, especially, and Georgia wanted to get this to become a home and home once again. And maybe it's because he's been looking at these home schedules for the Dogs in Athens the last couple of years, and it's like we got to give throw these fans a bone at some point, because as someone who was in the stands for Tennessee, Florida this past year, it is nice to have your rivals come to your place every other year. It's nice for that to be a home atmosphere that you get to alternate year over year, and we'll get into a program that is elected not to do that very thing this particular year, but we'll save that for a second. Matt Green, as a Georgia fan and a world's largest outdoor cocktail party connoisseur, is this something that you're in favor of? Do you feel good about this? Where is your head at now with where this game is played?
First of all, can I get that on a business card? Because I would like to have world's largest outdoor cocktail party connoisseur, maybe on my grave, on my headstone. I like that, but I think you nailed it because, for one, first and foremost, I think I would say 90% of Georgia's fan base feels if Kirby wants it, I want it too. So it's like if Kirby thinks it's a good idea, yeah, let's do it. He's had some good ideas. I like this guy. We'll follow him off a bridge. So that's part of it. I personally, I'm not a big neutral site college football fan. But these Oklahoma, Texas, and Georgia, Florida, like they're huge traditions in that. So it's like that neutral site already has the college football atmosphere, right? So I do kind of just want to preserve the tradition of Jacksonville, even though I think it'd be cool to go home and home. But I think you nailed it personally on why it seems to have picked up steam in recent years. Because Georgia's home schedule has been like so whack, honestly. Like this year, you look at it and I never really thought about it before because you look at Georgia ever since they did they switched around the Auburn series back 2012 and 2013. Georgia played at Auburn consecutive years, and I guess the SEC kind of did Auburn a solid. But ever since then, Georgia plays Auburn, Tennessee, and Georgia Tech at the same venue every year. So, or both all at home or all on the road. You know what I mean? And so, since Florida is a neutral site, you have your four biggest rivals essentially every other year. None of those games are at home. So, like that's not great for just having a consistently good home schedule. Like this year, I think Ole Miss is probably the best home game. Just kind of off the top of my head, that's
maybe
like
Kentucky,
the most,
depending on how Kentucky.
Yeah, and it's like Georgia. There's just never going to be a buzz around the Kentucky game. Like I was literally at a Georgia-Kentucky game 2 years ago. That was College Game Day. They were in the top 10. And it was like there's no like feeling that we could lose this game. Like with Georgia-Tennessee, you're like, we're better than Tennessee, right? Like. We are better than them, right? That offense is really good, but we should be better, right? Like you weren't sure if you really were better than Tennessee going into that game. There was a buzz around it. Like Kentucky just doesn't really do anything for the Georgia fan base. Like no disrespect to Kentucky, it's just it's a feeling. Like they kind of have to earn it, like scare us a couple times before. Like even the Missouri game, like going at Missouri, Georgia's played a few tough games at Missouri that you go in and that's not you don't have the easiest feeling in there. So I think part of it, like Arkansas turned out to be that was a really weak home schedule that year. Arkansas turned out to be a pretty good home game, and Tennessee turned out to be a good home game in 2022. But you've seen a lot of weak home schedules, but I love that they kept it for 24-25 in Jacksonville because that was going to throw so many variables in there. So we have the new SEC schedule starting in 2024, and then people get it, Georgia, Florida in the swamp or in Athens, and they're, oh yeah, I love this. So it would just, this whole season's been better. Like, oh, and that's why, because it's on campus. But I think what you're going to see is that with this new SEC schedule, like, let's be honest, there's a lot of SEC West hate that Georgia's gotten through the years that, some of those years that they're 11-1 is because the SEC East is so weak and they'd be the third best team in the SEC West. I think there's some truth to that. You look at a year like 2019, LSU and Alabama were the two best teams in the SEC, but Georgia was playing in the SEC championship. So there's been some truth to Georgia's schedule being a little weaker than some of those SEC West teams. So now with Texas and Oklahoma coming into the conference and just most likely a ninth conference game, and we assume they're going to get rid of these divisions, I think Georgia's schedule is just all the SEC schedules I think are going to be immediately just more stacked, and you're going to have more good home games. And right now you're like searching for what Georgia's best home game is. And I think in 24-25, they're going to have 3 or 4 that are just big time marquee SEC matchups. And you're not really going to miss Florida being a home game, and you're going to be able to preserve that neutral site tradition.
Well, that's what I was tweeting back and forth with Logan Booker, another friend of the show up there in Athens. And I just think a sneaky big winner of the 9-conference game model and the new rotation that's going to be implemented next year, I think the Dogs are maybe the biggest winner here. And you talked about like the SEC West bias, but like just having that rotation where you can like this schedule, I think, and it's not like a shot at Georgia. It's like they can't really control some of this. And then obviously losing a big game this year against Oklahoma off the calendar was a brutal blow too for this schedule as a whole. But it just, two things can be true. The Dogs don't have to prove themselves in the regular season. Like that's not part of it. Like no one's going to be, the strength of schedule. I don't know about Georgia coming in, but I look at it as a fan where it's like, if this was Tennessee's schedule, I was in the position that Georgia's in, where it's like, these are the glory years. Like this is the best the program has ever been. Like this is the top of the top, and you're going to have 2 straight years, maybe 3 straight years, if you want to go back to 2021, of really subpar home games. Like there's a reason Notre Dame, Georgia was so big for so many fans and that home and home environment. And it's just, you want, when things are going this well, to have a reason to go to these games in stadium and see a lot of like the best you'll ever see as a fan in your lifetime, and like have as many moments as possible, against as many big cool teams at home as possible. Because like even when the playoff expands, Georgia's gonna be in that top group. They're probably looking at a bye, so it might be hard to see a situation where Georgia's hosting a first round playoff series in the next couple of years, because that place would be rocking and be a lot of fun for Dog fans that they would like to do. But Georgia might be too good, so they might miss those. So I just think I think from a fan's perspective, I don't think it's a stretch or a shot to be like, if I was a fan who was spending a lot of money on season tickets and wanting to go to these games, that like this schedule sucks. And I don't think that, I think moving on to this new schedule coming out in 2024, there's going to be a lot more enticing, appetizing games in this calendar. And I think it's going to be probably the best Georgia schedule for fans in a long time.
I definitely think so. And I think it's gonna make them miss that home game less. But I mean, I'll say in terms of winners and losers, I think just everyone in the SEC East, to be honest, is more of a loser than everyone in the SEC West. Like Arkansas is probably the biggest winner of this whole thing of, maybe we don't have to play Alabama every single year. Like that would be nice. Like I think this is second year in a row that they've had the number 1 ranked strength of schedule in the country. But yeah, it'll be interesting. And like you said, like this is the time we want to play whoever, because I think we can beat whoever at this point. We don't even need an easy schedule.
Right. And I think that's important, because the season goes fast, man, and there aren't many opportunities. You only get 6 home games a year, sometimes less than that. So you want to make as many count as possible, especially when your team is on top of the college football landscape.
And even last year, Oregon was one of the biggest regular season games, and that also wasn't a home game.
Yeah, and that place would have been rocking.
And Clemson the year before. So
that's true. Man, I didn't even think about that. Clemson and Oregon back-to-back 2 top 10 teams.
And I want to say, is that happening in 2024? Maybe I'd have to. Georgia Clemson and Mercedes-Benz is going to be on the schedule coming up soon. So I think Clemson home and home like a couple years after that.
But then you don't feel as bad about 2024 if the schedule is 9 conference games and fun, and then if that one's a neutral site, who cares? And it's in the bend, so it's not far, but different kind of field. They've played in the bend so many times now. Speaking of indoor NFL stadiums, Michigan State, Penn State, is moving to primetime Peacock on Friday night, the week of Thanksgiving, Matt Green. So Michigan State fans will not be seeing their Spartans playing East Lansing in their final regular season game, because Michigan State, Penn State has become kind of a bigger rivalry the last couple of years, with Michigan and Ohio State already having that lockdown. They're just like the sneaky, like, who's next, you know, like those two teams have traditionally been fighting for that just I shouldn't say fighting from trying to get away from that tier 2 to tier 1 in the Big Ten for the last decade or so. And they're always recruiting well. They're always right there, pretty solid. You can count on year over year, but never breaking through every year. They're not the Michigan, Ohio State. They're not going to be at the top with that kind of sustaining power, that sustainability. But man, you move it indoors, and it looks like it might just be because weather getting ahead of that during that time. But man, what are we doing? Like, why is this happening? Why are you flexing this game outside of the home confines of Michigan State? And especially, like, if you're a Big Ten country, you should embrace these elements. It's what makes it different. It makes it better. Is that, like, this is going to be cold. It might snow. It might be a lot of fun. Like, I just...